Ladies and gentlemen, for the fourth and final time in our NFL preseason preview, MJ is here to join me. We're going to talk about the AFC North and the NFC North. Quick disclaimer, as I mentioned last week, we are recording this about a week in advance of when you'll listen and watch. So just keep that in mind if anything big happens over the last week of preseason games or so. Just take note, we were out ahead of that. So MJ, welcome back. I've appreciated you the last 3 weeks, and I think we got a good one in store for today. So, MJ, how are you today, buddy?
I'm doing great, man. We really do have a good show. I'm excited about this. Obviously, I was excited about the East, like with my Cowboys and in those teams in that division. But man, these are some good divisions. Super excited. Really good show.
Yeah, let's just dive in. Let's start with the AFC North. Quick recap of last year. The Baltimore Ravens win the division at 13-4. The Cleveland Browns 11-6. The Pittsburgh Steelers 10-7. They've had winning seasons all the way, or at least 500 or better. There are plenty of 500 seasons in there, but they have not had a losing season since 2003. And then the Cincinnati Bengals finished last in the division, the only team in the division to not make the playoffs, but still had a winning record at 9-8, despite not having Joe Burrow for large stretches of last year and him coming in injured to start the year. So, MJ, let's just dive in. I think we'll start with the Pittsburgh Steelers, but any overall thoughts on the division before we kind of hone in on them?
Yeah, I think it's obvious. Like this division's really really good. Like top to bottom, you can make a case for any of these four teams to win this division. You could probably make a case that any of these four teams make a deep playoff run. There's lots of intriguing quarterbacks and some really high level quarterback play. So when as I was saying before we got on, like I haven't taken too many chances, but I think this is the division where I see some vulnerabilities in a couple teams, and I think it's time to stick my neck out a little bit and take a couple leaps here. So we'll start with the Pittsburgh Steelers a little bit.
Yeah, big offseason grab for them, maybe. I don't know what to expect. Russell the Muscle, no more Broncos country, let's ride. I believe it's just him probably saying, here we go.
Yeah, he's terrible. No, it's just so cringy, man. But like I'm not sold on Russell Wilson anymore. I think his inability to make timed throws, his it like you love the guy's work ethic. You love what he kind of came from, coming out of Wisconsin years ago and making a name for himself. And like I have no doubt, like he's like a fringe Hall of Famer to me. Like I don't think that's like a crazy thing to say. And
had he not thrown that interception in the Super Bowl, he's probably already pretty much a guaranteed Hall
yeah,
of Famer.
and like I hope these last few years don't hurt his case. And this roster is really really good. Like the defense is really good. You obviously love your T.J. Watts and your Cam Haywards and they got Joey Porter Jr. from the draft a year or two ago in safety position. They still got Minka Fitzpatrick. Like it's a really really good team, and they're going to cause some trouble. But I actually think that this is I'm going to stick to this. I think this is going to be their first time under 500 this season. I think the schedule's tough, and part of it was even if they split games with the Browns, if they split games with the Ravens, if they split games with the Bengals, it's the rest of the schedule really isn't that easy. I think there's going to be times where there are multiple games under 500. And I have them actually as a surprise here. I predicted a 6-11 season. And
yeah, just a couple of the teams they play: Chargers, Cowboys, Jets, obviously the Ravens and the Browns and the Bengals twice, Eagles, and the Chiefs. Yeah. So those are some tough teams that they got to match up against.
And it really comes down, like, I think Najee Harris is a little underrated. I think he's slow and, he has some issues. But with him and Jalen Warren back there, like, there's a little bit of lightning and thunder there. I don't mind that. I think their offensive line has improved. It just really comes back to, like, what like Russell Wilson, I don't think is at that level anymore in this division. If this is the NFC South or or something like that, even the AFC South in some aspects, like I think they have more of a puncher's chance. I just this division is so good, and I think they have combined. Even if you combine Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, I don't think the quarterback play and team around him can carry those mistakes. And I could be really wrong on this. Like I said, you can make a case that the Steelers could win this division. I don't believe so much in Russell Wilson um, as much as some other guys. And I think they finally kind of fall apart a little bit. And then it's total rebuild time a little bit. Not maybe total rebuild. Maybe that was wrong to say. But now you got to give the keys to
Find a
Justin.
quarterback kind of rebuild.
Yeah, and maybe next year it's just Justin Fields, and you
I
roll
don't
with
think
that.
he's the answer.
I don't either, and I feel bad.
And I think it
saying
says a lot that there's kind of any sort of discussion about a quarterback, not controversy, but quarterback competition. Like if that there's even a discussion about that is a bad sign for Russell Wilson.
And to me, if I'm Mike Tomlin and the Steelers, like I go with Justin Fields. If it's 50-50, I put the younger kid out there. If you
get that.
think it's Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, I know I'm kind of holding my hands up like level. You go with the younger guy. Like it and now you have a serviceable backup in case Justin Fields get hurt. But I think Fields can make any throw that Russell Wilson can. He's more athletic at this point in his career. He's a little bit bigger. I just, to me, it makes sense to go with the younger guy in this situation. But I think they're going to trot out Wilson for the majority of, especially the beginning of the season.
Yeah, I don't see it going well for this team. I am in agreement with you that 6-11 is very in play. I think they'll fucking somehow find some way to Steelers it up and 7-10, 8-9. I don't think they're a threat at all to win the division. I do disagree with you there when you said you could make an argument for it. I think if you're making that argument, you're very wrong. Maybe our good friend Joel might have a different feeling on that, but I don't think this team has any chance to win the division based on what we've seen out of Russell Wilson the last 3 years.
Yeah.
If he comes back and he's the Russell Wilson from like 2020 and before, I'll eat my words, but I doubt it.
You got to see it.
Yeah, show me.
Yeah.
Show me that, and I'll buy in. Let's talk about the Cleveland Browns. There was points of last year where Joe Flacco was leading them.
Yeah.
Flacco's out of town. They're back to Deshaun Watson, who has not panned out for them since he's come to town. This was a team that was 11-6 last year. There's some nice pieces on this team, but what are we expecting? It just has never seemed like it's really clicked with Watson, which is funny to say coming off an 11-6 season. Again, I know Flacco was the quarterback for much of that, but I think Watson was even had a nice record at one point too. Where do we see this team? What do we see them doing? Because I think you're going to agree with me that the next two teams, the Bengals and the Ravens, are probably the class of this division. So
not so fast, my friend.
Not so fast.
Not so fast, my friend. So I really dove into the Browns because I like thinking about it last year, or like when I was kind of getting ready for the podcast in these last few weeks, I was like, what was the Browns record last year? I was like, what? Like, how were they in the playoffs and everything? And so I was like, oh yeah, Joe Flacco was there. He played really well at the end of the season. And I was like, well, that must have been what happened. So in my head, I was thinking, well, the Browns were kind of average, good defense. Chubb goes down. Jerome Ford comes in and plays well. And then I'm like, well, Flacco just got him into the playoffs and they like scraped in. And then I sat there and I'm like, they were 11-6. And so I was like, okay, so maybe they just rattled off 4 or 5 straight. And then I dove in. They weren't bad when Watson was healthy. I think they lost once with him.
Yeah, he was 5-1 last year, I believe.
So I'm sitting there and I'm like looking at this team and I'm like, all right, well, they added Jerry Jeudy. you can say what you will about him, but I think he's a serviceable 2 or 3. You have Devin Bush, linebacker, Jordan Hicks, linebacker. So they got even better on their front seven. I'm a big Myles Garrett guy. I think he's like, I had no issue with him winning Defensive Player of the Year last year over Micah Parsons, over TJ Watt. No problem at all. And then you even, if something happens to Deshaun Watson or he doesn't play well, Jameis Winston, there's worse second quarterbacks in the league.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I'm sitting there and I'm like, they didn't lose much. They lost a couple linebackers, but they filled those spots. Joe Flacco's gone now, which, I mean, nobody's like, oh my God, Joe Flacco, you're not going to win a game. I have them winning 11 games again and winning this division.
Hey-oh!
They win it with 11-6 record, tied with another team, which we'll talk about, but they get the tiebreaker. And they're 11-6, man. The Browns are like, they're going to be my team to watch this year, I think.
Okie dokie.
Yes.
MJ, you said you were sticking your neck out. Here we are.
That's
the neck's out. MJ's calling the Browns to win the division. I love it. I disagree, but I love it.
That's okay. Hey, I mean, they won it last year. Or, I'm sorry, they were right there last year. Like, I think it's going to be, I think it's going to be exciting in Cleveland a little bit. I love Amari Cooper, man. I'm a big Amari Cooper. I love David Njoku. Jerome Ford's going to have to carry the load for running back wise early in the season until Chubb's back. But if you really look at their schedule too, it's kind of backloaded a little bit. Their schedule gets a little trickier at the end of the season. Beginning, they have some winnable games. I know they start with the Cowboys. That's a winnable game, especially with that defense and how well they can play. And we don't know what the Cowboys are really going to be like opening night. Like you never know. Like Jerome Ford could have 125 yards rushing. Deshaun Watson hits Amari Cooper, a little revenge game. Like they could easily start 4-1, 5-0. Like I really do truly believe that. And then they're off to the races. Chubb comes back and they're rolling.
Yeah, they go host Cowboys at the Jags, host the Giants at the Raiders at the Commanders. A lot of road games there early, 3 of the first 5, but not like they're going up against juggernauts when they head out of town. So
yeah,
interesting. Browns to win the division. MJ, you're not kidding. The back end of their schedule can get a little brutal.
Yes.
From October 20th on, they play the Bengals and Ravens twice. They also have the Chiefs and the Dolphins in town at that back half of the schedule. So interesting. Well, let me do this then. Let's go over to the Bengals.
Okay.
Because I would guess you have them tying with the Ravens. So what do you see in the Bengals then? We got Joe Burrow back healthy, maybe. He's been quite injury prone. I think, 3 of the 4 seasons in the NFL. He's had either off-season injury problems coming in or injuries in the season. When he's healthy, he shows he's a fantastic quarterback. But half of the problem is you got to stay on the field.
Yep.
So what are we expecting with these guys? They did lose Joe Mixon.
Yes. And Tyler Boyd.
And Tyler Boyd. So how do they kind of fill those gaps? And can Joe Burrow be the quarterback everyone kind of thinks he is?
So you are right. Like some of their pieces that they lost, they lost the tackle Jonah Williams, but they drafted Amarius Mims from Georgia, who I like. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if he'll start, but he's definitely a guy that's going to be important. And like, it's hard to be like, especially in previews, well, this guy's going to get hurt or this guy's going to get hurt. Mm-hmm. And I do agree with the Joe Slim Shady Burrow, take when he does get injured. But man, when he's not injured, it's really incredible what he can do. I don't love their running back room anymore. Chase Brown, Zach Moss. But I do think this team's going to be really good. I think Burrow's going to kind of shut up everybody a little bit and just be like, hey, remember me? Like I'm this guy that can go on the road and beat the Chiefs. I'm the guy that can take this Bengals team that's been in the shitter for however many years and take them deep into the playoffs. And this is actually my team that I have tying the Browns at 11 and
Hey,
6. Uh,
curveballs all over the place,
they got
MJ.
they're going to win 11 games this year, and they're going to be really good. And I think it's going to be a little up and down at times. The schedule is tough, but the defense is okay. I actually kind of like the addition of Mike Gesicki at tight end. For so many years, you had guys like Eifert and stuff like that
Mm-hmm.
that would always be hurt, and it was always kind of up and down there. But Jamar Chase, I think if he's healthy, he's a stud, and they still have T. Higgins, who's probably a top 4 or 5 number 2 in the league.
Yeah.
So I really like this offense, and I think the defense can do enough. And I just believe in Joe Burrow. I think he has the intangibles to win some games that maybe it looked at halftime and you're like, oh, the Bengals aren't going to win this, but they end up doing it.
We will see a lot of the Bengals in primetime, especially
Yep.
later in the year. But they've got is that Sunday night? Sunday night is, let me see, I got to get my dates right here. Nope, they got a Monday nighter against the Commanders. There's a Thursday nighter, I think. There's a bunch of 7:15 games. I can't keep my dates straight, but I mean, they're playing 4 or 5 primetime games this year.
Yeah.
So the TV execs would like you to be right, MJ, to have the Bengals be competitive and be in the division. The team. You said the team you're kind of excited to watch, the Browns. I'm excited to watch the Bengals if Joe Burrow's there.
Yep.
I'd love to see a full year of healthy Joe Burrow and kind of see if he can live up to that promise that we saw. You know, he's a big deal coming out of LSU, gets him to the Super Bowl. I'd really like to see a full year of him being healthy and, what he can do with this team and what he can do with Jamar Chase. Because as we talked about last week, we've put Jamar Chase in a level of, top receivers that is pretty much unmatched. So I'm very excited to see what these guys can do with it. All right, now I'm really interested to hear what you have to say about the Ravens then.
So the one thing, and maybe you've caught this pattern in the last few weeks, is I don't like teams that have the quarterback that everyone believes is a top 5 or top 10 quarterback, and in the offseason, they lose a lot more than they bring in. I don't always love that. It hurts depth. It's a long season.
They lost a bunch of guys on their line.
Yes. So that's not even, and I'm talking Jadeveon Clowney's not there anymore. Odell, you can say what you will about him. Like he had some moments last year. But Dobbins is gone. Gus Edwards is gone, and I'm not saying they were anything to write home about. I know they bring in Derrick Henry, which I think the Ravens are probably. I would bet the house they're a top 5 rushing offense. I don't think that's anything spectacular, but there's going to be games where Lamar's going to need to throw, and that wide receiver room isn't as deep as it was. They have. I love Zay Flowers. You know how I feel about Zay Flowers. I talked to him about in the draft a lot, but he's their one. Like he's the one. Like he's their best receiver. Rashad Bateman's there. They brought in Nelson Aguilar. He's their 3rd best receiver, Wally.
God, how old is Nelson Aguilar?
He's just been on a lot of teams. That's all it is.
Is that it? He's not as old as I'm thinking he is.
I maybe 6 or 7 years.
He's 31.
Okay, so maybe 8 years now. Something like that.
Let's pull him up here. He played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years in Philly, a year in Las Vegas, a couple years with the Patriots, now to Baltimore. So
he drops a lot of passes. That's always the knock on Aguilar. He makes a lot of special plays. I love Mark Andrews, but I know I'm kind of contradicting myself a little bit, but he's shown that he can't really stay healthy.
Yeah.
I do think if he's healthy, I love Zay Flowers and I love Mark Andrews. I even like Isaiah Likely, the backup tight end.
I like Zay Flowers too. I just don't like him as a 1.
That's what and maybe he is. Maybe he's and people compared him to Steve Smith Sr. when he was coming out. Maybe that's who he is. Maybe he can kind of carry that 1B type attitude and just take off. But, they want to be physical. They want to play hard defense, and I think the defense is going to be pretty good. But I just don't love the roster as much as last year,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't really fill holes that they lost. So I'm a little worried about their pass rush at times. I love Michael Pierce, the nose tackle, Kyle Hamilton in the safety spots. Like he's probably one of the most underrated safeties in the league. I'm just a little concerned with this roster, and I still have them making the playoffs. So this isn't like panic mode for Baltimore. I have them winning 10 games, but I think there's going to be some ups and downs.
So you're seeing another three-year,
I am.
three-team AFC North year.
Yeah, it's hard to ignore all the talent and especially the defensive side of the ball on all three of these or all four of these teams. Like there's really good players. The Bengals may be the weakest, but I think the Bengals offense is probably the best. So
Mm-hmm.
it kind of balances it out a little bit. So I'm interested to see, but I took a chance here, and I think it's still a really good season. And I think Baltimore still has a lot to be excited about. But I am a little concerned with some of the weapons that Lamar has on the outside. But we'll see. Maybe he goes out and wins MVP a little bit and balls out.
The line really concerns me. They lost their left guard, John Simpson, their right guard, Kevin Zeitler, and then Morgan Moses. I don't know if he was a starter. He might have been. But losing three of your linemen, that worries me.
Yep.
Especially for a team that loves to run the football. And, we talk a lot about this division got three teams to the playoffs last year. They want to combine one game. The Ravens beat Houston in the divisional round and then lost to Cincinnati. They played well in that game, if I remember right. Or at least they kept it close. I can't remember the actual gameplay, but it was only 17-10, so they were in it the whole way. But that's been kind of the knock on this Baltimore team is that they're late in the season in the playoffs. It's like, show me when it matters. That's been my knock on Lamar.
Yep.
Is that he's an incredibly talented player. There's no doubt about it. He's improved throwing the ball, but still it's like, yeah, okay, you can beat Houston at home in the divisional round, but can you go to Kansas City? Can you go to Cincinnati? Could you go to Miami? Whoever else could you go to Houston now that they have another year under their belt, and can you get it done there? So that's my big knock on these guys. And, it's a Lamar thing, really. I mean, he's got to live with it and take kind of the heat, unfortunately for him. He can kind of do all he can and carry them to where they're at. But isn't
there now, correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe I'm making this up. I thought I saw a stat somewhere where like the Ravens haven't scored over a certain amount of points in a playoff game with Lamar. And I don't know what the line was, but it's almost like I don't know. And maybe I could be wrong. So
see if I can find a little something here on the. So they're 2-4 all time in the playoffs with Lamar. They've scored 17 points in 2019 against the Chargers. They scored 12 in 2020 against the Tennessee Titans and lost that game. In 2021, they beat the Titans 20-13. And then in 2021, they then lost to Buffalo 17-3 in the divisional. Last year in the divisional, they scored 34 points in their win over Houston, but then they again lost 10-17 against the Chiefs. So
kind of one outlier a little bit.
Yeah, they've scored 17, 12, 23, 10, and then the outlier is the 34 points they hung on Houston last year. So there is maybe a question there about can they get it. Can they get the ball moving offensively? I mean, they racked up some yards in some of those other games. But yeah, you got to put the ball in the end zone.
Yep.
Cool. Any final thoughts on the AFC before we head over to our final division, the NFC North?
Let's go to the North. Let's go to NFC North. Let's do it.
All right, we're going to move from the northeast of the United States over to the Midwest, the upper Midwest, the NFC North. Let's do a quick reminder for everybody how we finished last year. The Detroit Lions win the division at 12-5. The Green Bay Packers finished 9-8. The Minnesota Vikings finished 7-10. They got off to a hot start and then lose Kirk Cousins. And the Chicago Bears, 7-10 as well. MJ, why don't we start with the Bears?
Okay.
And, toss in any overall thoughts you have, too, while we're on the way. But actually, I take that back. Let's not start with the Bears. Let's start with the Vikings.
Okay.
With J.J. McCarthy going down, it looks like it's going to be Sam Darnold probably.
Yep.
Probably the weakest team in this division. So let's just start there.
Yeah. This is one of those teams, I think you can pinpoint in the league, a few of them where it's man, this roster's solid. It has some really good pieces. It's got a good mix of some youth and some veterans. They just brought in Stephon Gilmore on a 1-year deal just the other day, which is a nice ad for them. Of course, you have Justin Jefferson, but it all kind of trickles back to it's Sam Darnold, or even it's J.J. McCarthy. You just don't know. So Sam Darnold's been in the league now for a few years. I think this is his chance. This is his chance to be the Geno Smith of this kind of next few years. If he can somehow just move another place, he's been around the league now with the Jets and Carolina, he was in San Francisco. If he can now just find his little home in Minnesota
and not right back.
And just and maybe he balls out and becomes, but I don't see it. I think this is going to be frustration city for Justin Jefferson. I don't. I think Aaron Jones is a very good running back, but I think teams are going to be able to kind of key in on some run game situations and pin this team back on some long downs and distances. And I think it's going to be a struggle. I have them winning 5 games. I think they're going to be in a top 5 draft pick situation, which might actually be in the long run a really good thing for them in the long run. So I think this is going to be a tough season for Minnesota. There's a lot to like on their team, but I don't see how the quarterback kind of catapults them into that 7, 8, 9, maybe 10 win team that maybe was possible with somebody like Kirk Cousins a year ago.
Yeah, and I was never a big fan of the J.J. McCarthy pick myself. Maybe we just didn't see it in college because of the offense Michigan ran. They really like to just pound the rock.
Yep.
I mean, when they played Penn State, I watched them run it 35 straight times in the second half or something like that. So maybe you just didn't get to see it. And I do think, Minnesota's got some good guys defensively, a couple edge guys. They brought in Van Ginkel. They drafted Dallas Turner. So I think there could be some good stuff on the defensive side, but it just comes down to Sam Darnold's going to be the guy you're going to trot out there. It's I don't know. Not seeing it. Not seeing it. 5-12. That could even be generous.
This could be a team that you look back at the end of the year and be like, they were in a lot of games, but they lost all the close.
All of them. Yeah.
Their margin of error was a possession. They lost by late field goals or a late interception or something. It almost feels like that's going to be kind of the story. A lot of good things are happening, but it just wasn't enough this year. So,
all right, let's move to the Chicago Bears. A very interesting team to talk about. They obviously bring in Caleb Williams. A lot of talk surrounding him, going back a couple of years in college. He was pretty much slated to be the number 1 draft pick for this year 2 years ago. There's been some questions about his attitude, and he was demanding things before he ever got to town. But since he's been in Chicago, it's been pretty much all positive reports of him in the locker room, at practice, and everything like that. He seems to have all the talent in the world, and they have surrounded him with one of the best receiving cores in the NFL. Bring in Keenan Allen. They got DJ Moore last year. They draft Roma Dunze. Mm-hmm. So, they're setting him up offensively to be a stud. Can he hold up to it? It's his rookie year. It's, as much as I hate the Bears and would love to be that's it. People write him off. I think he'd have to take a step back and be hey, He's a rookie in the NFL. If he can do some good things, pick up some wins, I think that's a good sign. But the Bears going to be the Bears, y'all. So, like, are they going to be able to actually do it, or are they going to fuck it up? So,
again, another team that you look at and you're like, man, this roster's pretty good. And they've added quite a bit. They didn't have a ton of draft picks, and like to the Caleb Williams point, I've been back and forth on this guy for. It feels like, well, it probably is almost a year. Like I really start diving into the draft in like December, January, and like I can't I never I was like, no, he's going to be a bust. No, he might be the next best thing. And I'm going to lean on the side. If I had to pick one, I think he's going to be really good. So I'm gonna put my foot in the ground, draw the line in the sand, and say I think Caleb Williams is going to be a really good quarterback in the league. I don't know if he's the next Patrick Mahomes or anything, but this roster is really good around him. So if he can't really produce with these weapons that he has in the next 1, 2, 3 years, I think then that's a bad sign. Then maybe you have to start looking at your options otherwise. But the running back room is okay. I like DeAndre Swift. He's like a serviceable running back. They still have Khalil Herbert. Roshan Johnson has had some starter minutes in a role too. Love DJ Moore. And I really think Rome Odunze could be the number 2 on this team by midseason. And I know I love Keenan Allen, but there's been some injury history there. He's getting a little older. But what a good third wide receiver, if by chance he's the third wideout.
yeah.
Cole Kmet's still there. They brought in Gerald Everett, the crafty old veteran there. And I love what they did up front. Like they've drafted a couple guys over the last couple
DeAndre
seasons.
Swift, too.
Yeah, yep. Darnell Wright's there. They drafted a year ago, I believe. Braxton Jones. They brought over Montez Sweat, I think, a year or two ago for the defensive side of the ball. They have Jalen Johnson, corner, who's really, really good. Like, this roster is really good. I actually have them, and I know a lot of people that I've seen and listened to, they kind of have, it's one way or another. They're going to surprise people, and Caleb Williams is going to be fighting for a playoff spot, or, well, it's his rookie year. He's going to have his bumps. They're going to win 4, 5, 6 games. I'm kind of in the middle here. Like, I think they're going to surprise some teams, but they're going to have some bumps too. I have them at 8 and 9, being third in this division. Like, I think it's fair, and I think there's a lot to be excited for at the end of the season for the coming years in Chicago.
Yeah, my feeling, I'm hoping, obviously, he's not the next Patrick Mahomes. I don't think he is. I think his decision-making at USC was pretty poor. That said, people said the same thing about Pat Mahomes, like that his decision-making was poor. But, I do think that leaves some questions. That all said, I think he's going to be a good quarterback, and we've used Kirk Cousins a number of times as comparison.
Yeah, we have.
I think he could have a very Kirk Cousins-like career.
Yeah.
Where he has a lot of, puts up a lot of good numbers, is a very serviceable quarterback. Like, when you get the good team around him, he's going to excel. And, that's nothing wrong with that. That said, you always wonder about a guy with the hype like he has. What happens if it doesn't go well? Like, if you get off on the wrong foot, and I'm not saying he's going to turn into a Ryan Leaf or anything, but, like, if you get off on the wrong foot, does it beat up your confidence? Like, what does that do to you? And they don't have the craziest schedule to start the year, which could be good for them.
Yep.
Titans come to town. They go to the Texans. Those are their first 2 games. And then they have the Rams in week 4. But, I mean, sandwiched around that is the Colts and the Panthers and the Commanders and the Cardinals all early. So, and the Patriots. Like, there's plenty of games to get some good wins under their record before the Packers come to town on November 17th. So if they can build some momentum, I think that'd be a good sign for them and a good sign for Caleb Williams.
And to your point, like in my notes here, this is a quote in my notes here. My one issue in college was decision making at times. But I also put in here his ability to make any throw and his versatility off script.
Hmm.
It's pretty special at times. It's hard to ignore those things. And man, they're just loaded.
Yeah.
Like he has weapons galore. Like the only thing I would think that would really hurt him if he really just goes into a shell and starts holding the ball for too long, or is slow on his reads. But he hasn't really. I've watched a little bit of preseason. Like he makes some good time throws. Like
Mhm.
he seems to be, when things aren't there after his first or second read, like he can buy himself some time. Like, and he has the weapons to make some plays.
I will say this about the decision making thing to circle back on that. I do think sometimes these guys, these quarterbacks in college who, they're a year from being able to come out, a lot of times you almost see them, I don't know if regress is the right word, but like they don't really improve in that final year
Yeah.
after they've been tabbed like, oh, he's next year's first pick. And I almost wonder if there's like I'm going to out talent everybody in college football and
Yeah.
I'll try and make some tougher plays that if they come into the NFL and they're like, oh, I got to dial it up. Like I got to be smarter. I got to make the better read. I can't just try and arm talent it. And that decision making kind of almost fixes itself just by the fact of the competition they know they're up against. Versus if you're, at USC and you're playing a UCLA, you're like, oh, I'll just
Yes.
fucking sling it all over.
And you have to think too, like, and I'm not bashing USC at all, but that roster wasn't great. The
No.
offensive line wasn't very good, and like he's going to have better weapons in the NFL.
Yeah.
Every rookie quarterback has better options in the NFL. That's why they're in the NFL. So you have to take a little bit of all that. The defense was atrocious for the USC teams too. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so I mean, they were giving up 50 points a game. It felt like so.
Yep. All right, we're going to save the Packers till last. So let's move over to the Detroit Lions. 12-5 last year.
Yeah.
Can they do it again, MJ? Will they win the division?
Yes, I'm gonna say I think, like, I love the Jordan Love hype, and we're gonna talk about the Packers soon. This, like, Dan Campbell's doing some really good things, and I'm so glad. Like, former Cowboy tight end, back in the day. Like, I'm so glad for Dan Campbell because, like, he seems like a guy that he just wants to really just win games. Like, that's all
Yep.
he cares about. And sometimes you get like these half-assed answers from all these head coaches. I like Dan Campbell a lot.
I
I like,
love Dan Campbell. I
yeah.
want to let me start out by saying I love Dan Campbell. I would be happy to have him as my coach. Here's my one question about Dan Campbell. Does that shtick get old in the NFL?
I
Like you
think,
see guys like that coming, like Harbaugh. Like it seems like
yep.
Harbaugh's shtick gets old in the NFL. Like does his have a little different flair to it?
So with me, I even look at this with myself as being a coach. If it's genuine, guys will buy in. If it's
Mm-hmm.
truly genuine, like if he truly means what he's saying and does and backs it up with his actions and his words and all that stuff, guys will, I think, especially professional athletes will be like, all right, whoa, this guy might be a little like weird at times, but like he's being genuine. Like I got a job to do for him.
Mm-hmm.
So I think maybe in the Harbaugh case, maybe it's not genuine. Maybe it's a
Yeah.
little fake. Maybe they feel like it's one way sometimes and one way another. So you just don't know unless you're in that locker room. But I think this team loves him. I love that he takes a lot of chances and fourth down situations or late game situations. Like NFL players love that shit. Like
Yeah.
they don't
And
want to.
it makes him so fun to watch.
Yeah, they don't want to settle for field goals. They don't want to. They don't. No quarterback doesn't believe that he can't make that 4th and 4 throw and keep the drive going. They don't want to settle for a punt or a field goal or something. So I think they love that part of him, his competitiveness, and he's jacked, dude. I'd be fucking afraid of him.
And this is a team that was, beating the shit out of the 49ers in the NFC Championship game last year.
Yes,
They were up 24-7 rather, and got outscored 27-7 in the second half.
Yeah.
I think if the team comes back from that the right way, that's like a rallying cry, like the whole year, like revenge. Like we were right there. We didn't finish it off and get to the Super Bowl unless they crater around that. But with a guy like Dan Campbell, I think they'll build upon that. And as a Packer fan, it's quite scary to see that team in the same division.
Yeah. I think they're 11-12 win team. I have written down here, like, I wanted to put 12-5, but I did 11-6 to be safe because I was a coward a little bit. But their balance of speed and strength is one of the best in the league. It reminds me a lot of San Francisco a little bit. I love what they did in the draft with Terry and Arnold, the corner. They're two-headed monster with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. I know Gibbs has got a little bit of a hamstring thing going, I think, right now. But David Montgomery can carry the load for however long Gibbs needs, I think. Mm-hmm. They have the weapons on the outside. I love Amon-Ra St. Brown. This team has a really good balance of a lot of things. Obviously, Sam Laporte is there. He had a really good rookie year. The defense is solid all around, and they just keep kind of building in depth. And what you can say, we always talk about it. You can say you go back to the quarterback. I'm a big believer in Jared Goff, man. He was really good for the Rams.
I was just going to say, really I have his like career set up here. He's had 2 losing seasons. His first year in 2016 when the Rams were terrible. They went 0-7 in the 7 games he started.
Jeff Fisher.
And then the first year he was in Detroit, they went 3-10-1 in the 14 games he started. Other years, 11-4, 13-3, 9-7, 9-6, 9-8, 12-5. He's thrown for over 4,000 yards 4 times. His last season in LA, he threw for 39.52, so almost there. And then the first full year as a starter, he threw for 38.04. He's had a couple of different years. His last 3 years in LA, his interceptions kind of spiked up 12, 16, 13, and his TDs kind of came down. His TDs have come back up. His interceptions popped up a little bit last year, but as you throw it more, he had the second most attempts in his career last year. As you just throw it more, it's bound to happen. He is a very solid quarterback. And I think it got a little bit covered up by the Sean McVay stuff, and then Matt Stafford comes to town, and the Rams win the Super Bowl. But Jared Goff is good. It's like, how long can he keep this up? He just signed a big 4-year extension. He's got to be about 30 now, if I'm not mistaken. He's 29. He'll turn 30 in October. So, I mean, he's not old in any sense of the word, especially in today's NFL for quarterbacks, when you see quarterbacks routinely playing the 35, 36, 37, and upwards in some cases. It's a scary team.
Yeah. It's really scary. And, just sticking with Jared Goff real quick, he was good with the Rams. He took them deep in the playoffs. I'm not making that up. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. And now he's in Detroit, and but they found their coach like the Rams did. They put pieces around him, and he's shown me over the years, and I think people just kind of dismay it because he's a skinny, tall, white guy, and they're just like, well, he's all right. But name 7 more successful quarterbacks in the league. Successful. I'm not saying better, but just successful in a short period of time. He's shown that he can be deep in the playoffs and play well. He's not reasons that the team's always losing. And sometimes he's the reason why they are winning. So I like Jared Goff a lot. I like this team a lot. I just like their attitude. I think this is a really good team, and I think they'll be good again this year.
I just pulled up Pro Football Focus's ranking of NFL quarterbacks. They have him ranked 16th. I think that is a huge disservice. I'm going to just list out a couple of the quarterbacks they have ranked ahead of him. Kirk Cousins, Tua, Brock Purdy, Trevor Lawrence, Jordan Love, C.J. Stroud, Jalen Hurts, and then I think we get to the part where we're not really questioning it too much. Jalen Hurts, Aaron Rodgers, Dak, Herbert. Herbert, I think we could question. Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar, Patrick Mahomes.
I
But
just
there
just
were,
based on success, you could probably keep Rodgers above him, Purdy, and maybe Jalen Hurts. That includes so the rest of them. I think a really there's a little bit of an argument. Like Dak
yeah,
Prescott, do I think Dak Prescott's better? Yes, but more successful? No. Like Trevor Lawrence? No.
no.
Like those guys might be more talented, but
I mean, if I had to start a team for the next 4 years right now, and you gave me Trevor Lawrence or Jared Goff, like the thought process would be, oh, Trevor Lawrence, younger, more talented, and I'm not just jumping on the Trevor Lawrence train, and I
nope,
know you aren't either after our
nope.
conversation a week or two ago. So,
Yeah,
anything else for
no.
the Detroit Lions?
Let's head on to Green Bay. Let's get to Wisconsin here.
All right, man. Give me your thoughts. Lay them on me.
All right, I'm going to be quick because I'm sure you got a lot to say. So I have them finishing second. I have them winning 10 games, so 10-7. I really like their defense. I love the draft pick of Marshawn Lloyd. I don't know if he'll see a ton of time. Maybe if Josh Jacobs, coming in, maybe gets hurt or just isn't playing well. I the Packers are kind of an anomaly with their offensive line. Like
Mm-hmm.
for years and years, they just trot out like second and third string guys or like practice squad guys, and they're somehow still good. So I believe their offensive line is going to be serviceable.
Yeah,
They're
they're already talking like it's going to be basically a six-man offensive line. They're going to kind of rotate guys.
Yeah, and they got two young tight ends, which I like with Luke Musgraves and Tucker Kraft. They have a young receiving core that everybody's excited about with Wicks and Romeo Dobbs and Watson. Like everything's right there. Everybody's really high on Jordan Love. I'm just hitting the brakes a little bit on the team. I just feel like Jordan Love 365 days ago, everybody was like, including me, was like, he's probably not going to be there next year. And he's had some opportunities, and he hasn't really flashed like people wanted him to after the Rodgers leaving to New York. And I know 9 games at the end of the year were super impressive, and what he did against Dallas, he didn't really have to do anything. He just had to turn around and hand the ball off. But like there's a lot to be excited about. So I think this team's really good, and I love the youth of it, in that they're already competitive in a relatively really young team. I love it. And they just kind of got younger. Like they finally got Bakhtiari out of there after not playing forever. Aaron Jones is getting a little older. They didn't really, I don't think they were ever sold on Darnell Savage at safety. Like they were
No.
just they were like, you know what? These guys aren't our guys. We're going to be fine with Jair Alexander and all these guys. Like, I like what they're doing. I think I've told you this before. Green Bay is one of the best organizations in the NFL. The way they draft and develop, and then they just seem to find guys. And I think this is another really solid team that could make some noise in the playoffs. I think they're a wild card team, but a really dangerous one.
I love a couple of things they did in the offseason. Xavier McKinney,
Yep.
I think, is a big improvement over Darnell Savage. I'd like that they got off him. Like you said, it was good that they finally got rid of Bakhtiari. I love the dude, and he was an incredible player, but he just hasn't been the same for 3 or 4 years, whatever it was. Good draft pick in Jordan Morgan. I liked a lot of their kind of draft picks. That
Yep.
Edgerrin Cooper, the guy to bring in on the rush rather, for inside linebacker and kind of that mode to help with the rush. Marshawn Lloyd is a guy that I'm excited to see what they do with him. I think he's going to end up getting kind of the second back snaps. I think A.J. Dillon's going to get kind of phased out. I mean, A.J. Dillon basically took a deal with the Packers, a 1-year deal that was dog shit because nobody else wanted him. So, all that said, I'm a little worried. There's a lot of hype.
Yes.
Jordan Love was very bad for the first 8 games. I was at my brother's house. I can remember it very vividly on Thanksgiving Day, and the Packers were playing the Lions. and he hadn't been watching much of the Packers, and he was just kind of asking me, I'm like, we need to just fucking tank. We got to tank. Like, we need a higher draft pick. And they all of a sudden they start playing really well. And my brother's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Jordan Love's awesome.
Yeah.
And they went on that run at the end of the season and looked great against Dallas. And I know I was on here. I might have been on here with you, or I may have just been talking to you. I was having fits over, the way they performed against the 49ers in the divisional round. Because as a Packer fan, you got to take advantage of those opportunities. And I had to watch us lose to the fucking 49ers again. All that said, I'm a little worried what the expectations are going to do to this team. You're not going to sneak up on anybody. Jordan Love was getting all the love last year. He's a top 5, top 10 quarterback. Okay, prove it to me this year, and then I'll be all in on the bandwagon. Who are we fucking kidding? I'll be all in on the bandwagon if they come out and beat the Eagles in week 1. I'll be wearing that fucking helmet around and just ready to fucking run through a wall and start calling Super Bowls. But I am bouncing back and forth so much with this team because I'm like, they made some good offseason. I think if the receivers with Watson and Jalen Reed, who's a guy I really love, Jalen Reed. Yeah. And then, Dontavian Wicks kind of showed up late. And you have Dobbs. If Dobbs can kind of be like that third or fourth guy with him and Reed, and then you can have Wicks and Watson stretching the field. Hey, now that said, there doesn't seem to be a number one receiver of those guys yet. Yeah. They're all very young, and there can be a lot to happen. If Watson can stay healthy, which has been a big if, then that's a whole nother thing. So I'm trying to temper expectations because I do worry there's kind of a regression back to the mean and that they played above themselves a little bit at the end of the year. And they do have some interesting games on this schedule. They start off against the Eagles. They're doing that down in Brazil, so God knows how that team's going to react. How is Josh Jacobs going to fit into the offense? They really figured something out on how to use Aaron Jones, despite him fumbling in every fucking big opportunity he ever had. So how does Josh Jacobs plug in, and what can they do to utilize him correctly? And can he find it? He's saying all the right things. He's saying how much he loves being in Green Bay. He said he came for Jordan Love. He's been very happy with what he's seen of Jordan Love, so that's good. That said, there's the Lions in the division. Fuck the Bears. We're going to own those bitches just like we always do. November 17th, we're going to roll in the Soldier Field and fucking stake our claim on that piece of shit stadium before they move out to their new one.
Yes.
But at the same time, they go through a hellacious stretch when they play right around there. They host the Lions, at the Bears, host the Niners, host the Dolphins, at the Lions, at Seattle.
Yeah.
That is from November 3rd to December 15th.
Yep.
The season could fall apart in that stretch of games.
Yep.
They could legitimately lose every single one of those games. So this team's got to prove it. And there should be a couple wins against the Vikings, but the Vikings in Minnesota is not traditionally a great spot for Packers to be. So, man, I don't know. I hope Love continues his play. I am worried about just how bad he was at the start of last year.
Yeah.
And hopefully that can just be written off to he was just getting his feet wet. He was just trying to find the groove. And when he did, it really started to click. There's a whole year of tape around on him now, though. How do defenses react to him? I know those back-footed throws just kept working, but I just watched and I'm like, you can't just keep doing that, can you? And I don't know, maybe you do. Maybe that's just his thing. So, I don't know. I am so up and down already. Football season hasn't even started yet, and I've talked myself through about 8 different scenarios.
Yep.
Whenever I feel myself getting too high, I make sure to text Bill, and he's like, these guys are going to fucking suck. 7-10 at best.
He thinks they're going to suck every year, but I will say the defense is pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say...
Yeah, the defense, I've talked so much offense. The defense was very good last year.
Yeah.
Lucas Van Ness was starting to maybe show some stuff.
Kenny Clark, Rashawn Gary,
Kenny Clark's an absolute stud. I almost said B.J. Raji.
Preston Smith. They got some guys.
Yeah. And if Jair Alexander can kind of... Last year wasn't a good year for him. If he can kind of get back to what he was a couple years ago and, that kind of stretch of time, that secondary could be pretty good with him and McKinney back there. McKinney playing over the top, and Jair maybe locking up the top receiver for somebody. So I'm excited. I'm nervous. I'm scared. I have all the feelings wrapped into one. And Friday, what is it? What's the date? Friday, September 6th. I'm gonna be around the cock. I'm gonna be in my basement. I'm gonna be ready.
Yes, sir.
Hopefully, we just run down to Brazil and kick the shit out of those fucking Eagles.
I mean, I would love that. I'm going to be cheering for the Packers that day too.
Did I say anything that you think is wrong? What? Just bounce back some thoughts at me now that I just ranted for however long.
I think we're on the same wavelength with like how I kind of said, like I kind of catch myself just pumping the brakes a little bit. Like I really like this team. I really like how youthful it is with some, really, really solid to above average veterans. Like, we just named a bunch of them, but it just comes back to that offense. It's kind of a new look and new feel. And that to me was just like, I think they're going to be good. If they can hit their stride kind of like they did a little bit last season and pull out some of those games at the end of the year, going to Seattle and hosting these other teams, like it could be a scary team. And if somehow this team were to have a home playoff game, going into Green Bay is not easy. Like it's exciting. To me, it's like if this was any other team, all this youth and change and kind of this new guard that they're having, it would just temper my expectations a little bit. Where I'm like, there's a lot to be excited about, but maybe a year away.
Yep. I will say one thing we forgot to talk about. New defensive coordinator in town, Jeff Hathley, running more of a 4-3 style. And also, from everything I've read, is a much more aggressive play caller than what we've seen in the past. And I'm sure you've heard me and Bill bitch about it. If it's 3rd and 10, the Packers are going to play 12 yards off the line, and it just annoys the shit out of me. So maybe we will see some more pressure, some tighter coverage, whether that's zone or man. I don't give a shit. Just let's not sit 12 yards off the ball when it's 3rd and 10.
Yep.
So it'd be interested to see that too. So I think I've exhausted most of my Packers thoughts now.
I love it, man. I think you did a great job. I think you nailed it. I think you're right where you're supposed to be. Don't be Bill and saying they're going to win 6-7 games.
I don't think that happens. Yeah. I think I wouldn't be shocked if there was like an 8-win season. Like I could see that. I don't see 6 or 7, but. Yeah. Well, MJ, anything else, man? Did you have any other predictions? A Super Bowl prediction?
I got a lot. So I'll go.
All right, let's go.
I'll go through them really fast, though.
You're fine.
So we'll start in the AFC playoff picture. So I've tried to predict what I think might happen this season. So I'm going to take it another layer deep, and I mapped out the playoffs of how I worked it out. And I'll give you the winners of each game and all the way to the Super Bowl. So just going down, it's the Chiefs get the first round bye, Browns 2nd seed, Texans 3rd, the Dolphins 4th, Ravens 5th, Bengals 6th, and the Jets get the final playoff spot at 7. So in the first round, we have the Jets visiting the Browns, the Bengals visiting the Texans, and the Ravens visiting the Dolphins. So, Game number 1, the Browns take care of business in Cleveland against Aaron Rodgers. Myles Garrett's the difference. Browns 24, Jets 17. The Bengals visit the Texans. Tank Dell, after a semi-disappointing game, breaks loose in the secondary, scores the game winner. Burrow gets picked off to seal the game. Texans 24, Bengals 21.
All right.
The Ravens go to Miami and lose 26-17. They don't get over that 17, 20-point hump again.
Hey-o.
Tyreek Hill goes off for like 175 and 2 touchdowns. So in the second round, we got the Dolphins at the Chiefs and the Texans at the Browns. Again, not as cold this time, but the Dolphins going to Kansas City, and they lose 27-20. A little bit more competitive,
Okay.
a little bit more scoring on the Dolphins side. The Texans leading at halftime. It's a low-scoring game. Browns shock the world. Nick Chubb rushes for 150 plus with 2 touchdowns, and they win on a field goal, 20-17.
MJ loves the Browns.
The Browns and Chiefs. The Chiefs win another AFC
Okay.
championship.
I was gonna say if you went that far, I was gonna have to step in.
They blow out the Browns. Watson throws a couple interceptions, fumbles at once. One's for a pick six. It's 31-13. The Chiefs go back to the Super Bowl. I hate it. I don't like it. On the NFC side, we have the Lions, Niners, Eagles, Falcons. Those are your division winners. Rams, Cowboys, Packers. Packers at the Niners. I'm sorry, Wally.
That's not gonna end well.
24-20. It's competitive. They're just a little too much.
There's a chance late to ice the game or
Yeah.
come score a winning touchdown, and
I
it
actually
ends
wrote in my notes.
horrendously.
Packers are winning at halftime.
Yep.
49ers score 21 straight to make it 24-13. Packers get a late touchdown, 24-20. Fine.
Uh-huh. Sounds about right.
Cowboys going to Philadelphia. Eagles swept the season series. It's hard to beat a team 3 times. Cowboys go in and beat the Eagles 34-27. Zeke scores. CeeDee Lamb has 130 plus yards, 2 touchdowns. Rams at Falcons. Rams blow out the Falcons. Rams 38, Falcons 20. It's blowout city. It's never close. Cowboys at Lions. Lions blow out the Cowboys. They run all over the field on them. Same old, 38-24. Rams at 49ers. The Rams go into San Francisco and knock off the 49ers. And Brock Purdy finally kind of has kind of a tough game. Like he needs to throw a little bit more, and he can't get it done. So we got the Rams at Lions in the NFC Championship. The Lions, Jared Goff gets back at the Rams for taking them away after a Super Bowl.
Fuck you, bitches!
And the Lions are Super Bowl bound. No revenge game for Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford might be thinking about retirement, maybe after this season or the next. So we got the Chiefs and Lions in the Super Bowl, Wally. It's a classic. David Montgomery scores 2 touchdowns on the goal line. Kelsey's a little banged up going to the game. His age is starting to wear at him. Sam Laporta scores in the game. Patrick Mahomes plays really well, but they settle for too many field goals. The Lions are your Super Bowl champions, 27-23. Detroit finally gets the Super Bowl. There it is.
My man said he was going out on a limb today, sticking his neck out, and he was not lying.
So, and real quick, and I'll make this quick because I do have to probably go. I had my league MVP as Patrick Mahomes. I felt that was boring. Saw a video literally today. Josh Allen does Zins sometimes. Josh Allen's winning MVP. I know I don't even have him making the playoffs. Somehow, some way, he's winning MVP. Coach of the year, DeMeco Ryans, Texans, probably should have won it last year.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. Comeback player of the year, Aaron Rodgers.
Okay.
Get the Jets to the playoffs. Offensive player of the year, CeeDee Lamb, by a landslide. He gets his contract. He's got like 180 targets and 130 receptions. I don't know, whatever it might be. Defensive player of the year, Max Crosby, defensive end from Las Vegas. Offensive rookie of the year, Jaden Daniels, quarterback, Washington. I think he has a good year. And defensive rookie of the year, this was tough for me. I'm going with Dallas Turner, edge from Minnesota.
All right. Yep. They like to bring the edges up there in Minnesota. You know what? Yeah, 1 second. I got one prediction left. Hang on.
Okay. Oh, God. Here we go, folks.
Fuck those expectations being tempered. Let's go. Packers to the bowl. We're getting it done, baby. 49ers be damned. Eagles be damned. Cowboys be damned. We're going through them all. Packers to the Super Bowl. Packers to the Super Bowl. That's all I got to say, MJ.
I love it, man. I love it.
We'll see you guys next week. Peace.